Good morning again. My name is the Reverend Dr. Arlesia Simmons, and I'm the East Regional Associate Director with Partners in Health and Wholeness. And so we are grateful that you have gathered with us this morning for our BIPOC Mental Health Grant webinar, hosted by Partners in Health and Wholeness, an initiative of the North Carolina Council of Churches. So during today's session, we ask that you keep your mic on mute, but feel free to post your questions in the chat box as they arrive. Questions will be answered after the session that will be facilitated by the Reverend Jessica Stokes. If you feel like you've missed something, do not worry. We will send you a recording of the webinar along with the links that may be mentioned during today's session. For our time of centering this morning, I'd like to share an excerpt from a book some of you may have seen or read about. It is from Blossoming Hope, the Black Christian's Guide to Mental Health and Wellness, written by Dr. Tanya Armstrong, who is a psychologist in the state of North Carolina. Again, this is an excerpt from Blossoming Hope, the Christian's Guide to Mental Health and Wellness by Dr. Tanya Armstrong. And she writes, although intangible, hope is an essential component of wellness. Hope, or an expectation of good to come, is what allows us to get up morning after morning and continue to put one foot in front of the other, even when we don't feel like it or when circumstances seem bleak. Hope is the opposite of hopelessness, which is the despair that is one of the hallmark symptoms of depression. Hopelessness is what makes us want to give in, throw in the towel, and go home. Under a hopeless outlook, life is too hard, has dealt us too many blows, and is only getting worse and not better. Multiple sources of wisdom agree to the significance of hope for fulfilling the purpose of our lives. And as Christians, we know that our God is the source of our hope. In Romans chapter 15, verse 13, we read, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Thus, our hope is rooted in God and is blossoming as we pursue wellness in mind, spirit, body, and soul. So again, thank you for joining us on today. And the next voice you will hear is the Reverend Jessica Stokes, who will facilitate today's webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arlesia, for that warm welcome and for that beautiful centering. Dr. Tanya Armstrong is incredible. And so I hope folks feel encouraged to check her work out. She is in Durham, North Carolina, so we're very fortunate to have such a strong advocate for mental health here in North Carolina. So Blossoming Hope, that's a wonderful reading. Welcome, everybody. Again, I'm Jessica. I'm so grateful that you are spending some of your day with us today. I'm grateful for your interest in this important project, and I want to be as concise and clear as possible as today we are going over and learning about the PHW BIPOC Mental Health Grant. So let's start from the very beginning here. This is a special grant opportunity that PHW, Partners in Health and Wholeness, is offering. This is not a grant that will be offered again to our knowledge. This is a one-time special grant opportunity. And so with that said, there are two opportunities within this grant. One is a $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity to work on mental health. And then the second is up to a $50,000 grant to develop a mental health community resource hub. And so what we are talking about today is to go over this opportunity. This is a grant opportunity that is reserved for BIPOC communities. So that may be a new terminology for some of you. BIPOC means Black and Brown Indigenous people of color. And so by BIPOC, we essentially mean any faith community that is predominantly non-white. So that includes Latinx, that includes Asian American faith communities, Indigenous faith communities, that includes all types of faith communities that are predominantly people of color. And the reason this is so important is that Partners in Health and Wholeness acknowledges the various social and economic blockades that unfortunately racism causes systemically in our culture. And so therefore, funding, grant opportunities, and overall support is often hindered by an inequitable system that is in our society. And so we want to be a part of a new way of doing health, a new world of health that is driven by God's hope for the world, which is equality and peace and justice. So if you find yourself here today and you're thinking to yourself, wow, my faith community is mostly white, or to be simple in our terms here, we highly recommend that you check out our other grant opportunities. We still have our community mini grants and our other mini grant, and you please check those out. We would still love to work with you. But that said, today we're talking about the BIPOC mental health. And so, Elizabeth, the next slide, please. We're going to begin by talking about the first portion of this grant. And so I say that first portion because, again, there's two parts of this mental health grant. And the first part is a $5,000 to $10,000 one-time opportunity. And what this $5,000 to $10,000 piece is a project that is working on mental health. It is addressing many of the things that you as a faith community endured and experienced during COVID and the ongoing pandemic, the way that mental health and emotional well-being was impacted. And let's all be honest here. We know that the pandemic did not establish mental health concerns. It certainly worsened and made things more evident. We could no longer avoid talking about mental health. We know now about the wide-ranging impact of mental health concerns. And not only that, with all ages, we have a better understanding of the importance of mental health and the acuity of mental health concerns from children and adolescents to students to all ages of adults and our older adults. And the faith community is perfectly situated, in our opinion, to deal with many of the everyday experiences of being human, which often include mental health concerns. So we're talking about grief, we're talking about the need, loneliness, all types of things that we experienced during the pandemic were made worse. And so we are hoping that this grant will help provide support, and we'll get into the deeper, the normalizing therapy and developing a referral support program and the many tangible, pragmatic needs of a mental health ministry in the local faith community. So this $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity, we have two more opportunities this March and May. And so if you don't mind going back a slide, Elizabeth, I appreciate you going forward. So for the March cycle, please, if you are wanting to get your application in, please do so by Friday, February 24th. So that's just a little less than a month from now for the March cycle. And then you can also apply or reapply for the May cycle. So that application, I don't have a hard date, but by Friday, May 5th, I believe, is when all applications need to be in. But the thing to take away, and you'll get a copy of these slides, is that we have two more opportunities to apply for this $5,000 to $10,000 PHW BIPOC mental health grant. So March and May, and to be considered for the March cycle, please get your application in by Friday, February 24th. How do you apply? Well, we need to have a current PHW collaborative pledge and clergy commitment on file. That is for any of our grants. That's not just for this grant. That's for our other mini grant programs, our community mini grants. That's also for the big mental health hub grant. We have to have a current PHW collaborative pledge or clergy commitment on file. What does that mean? That means within the last calendar year, okay? And we are happy to help make sure that is up to date. So just know that that is the first step. And that pledge and clergy commitment are that's on our Partners in Health and Wholeness website. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. Thank you. So what is the process timeline? This grant, again, this is a special grant opportunity in that it is a one-time opportunity, and it has a different timeline than our usual PHW grant offerings in that it is a rolling application. So we do have an outside review committee who is made up of nobody on staff. I just want to be clear with that. I know I tell you all that. The review committee is made up of mental health professionals and advocates who are concerned and looking for issues that impact BIPOC communities in particular. They have an anti-racist stance, and they are trauma informed, and they are looking at the logistics of the grants in a way that a professionally mental health clinician can look at it, and a professor of psychology can look at it and a community advocate can look at it. So they're looking at it through their own individual lens, and they meet quarterly. And so when I say that the application is rolling, what I mean is that you have until Friday, May 5th, and you can submit your application tomorrow. You can submit it in March or April, and you will be considered with the next review committee, that the next review that comes up. And so that is different than our other grants. If you are familiar with PHW health grants, we have these seasons in the year that you apply, and then we are reviewing in that season. We're getting back to you. So there's a little bit more waiting with this, because as you can imagine, working with a team that is outside of PHW, I try to put things together and make our quarterly reviews as organized as possible, because I can't just like reach out to them, ongoing. So I try to put things together. And so rolling means that you can apply, it gives you flexibility, but you will hear from us later than you would with one of the other PHW grants. Now, a big important piece for the $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity, and I want you all to hear me, I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. You can potentially get both the $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity grant, as well as the mental health hub grant, which we will talk about later. So what I mean by that is that it does not, you can get both of them potentially. Applying for one or receiving one grant does not disqualify you from the other grant. And so I'm going to say something else as carefully as I can. If you are thinking about the big mental health hub grant, it is recommended, highly encouraged, highly recommended that you first and foremost apply and receive a $5,000 to $10,000 grant. So, again, applying for one or the other, if you get one, that does not mean you can't get the other. However, we highly, highly encourage that you go ahead and apply and go for the $5,000 to $10,000 grant, especially if you are hoping for the big mental health hub grant. So please think on that. It is important. It's not too late. If you were thinking, oh, well, we'll just go for the big one, please go ahead and apply for this $5,000 to $10,000 grant now, so that you can later this spring go for the mental health hub grant. And so detail, detail, detail. I know a lot of folks are used to our PHW grants over the years. You've done grants with us. You know how our system works. We ask for a project. We ask for sustainability around the project. We ask for budget line items, meaning what your project costs, anticipated costs, estimated cost. We know things change, especially in this time of inflation, but we're really looking for as much as a close number as you can get. But I know many of you have received other grants from us, but let me encourage you to spend as much time as you can on this grant, because one, this grant is competitive. It is, this is a statewide grant, and we have so many faith communities across North Carolina doing wonderful things, many of which are focused on mental health. And so for you to be considered and for your project to be approved, your grant to be approved, we need detail, detail, detail. So please consider that. On our website, we have more information about that detail. And in one of my slides, I'm going to talk about what the committee is looking for. But I just want to go ahead and pin that here. We need a lot of detail because the review committee is concerned about the sustainability, the wide impact, and many things which we'll talk about, we'll look at closer here in a few moments. So let's say this grant has been open since May 2022. So what if you already applied, but your application was not approved? Please, first and foremost, know that you are not alone. Many faith communities have applied and were not approved on the first try. So you're not alone. That does not mean that your grant was not strong even, or it is a bad idea, or we do not see the purpose, or we do not see how it would come together. Not at all. It simply means that it is a competitive grant, and there's probably information that we need that will strengthen your grant. So maybe we needed clarity on the budget. We needed clarity on how you were going to make sure your project is working, how you were going to make sure that it was having the intended impact. And so if you applied and your application was not approved, I know that you get an email from me, but in that email, I invite you to tell me about certain parts of the grant that the committee said they needed more information on. And when you reply to me, as given in the instructions in the email, what I will do is I will take the information that you are supplying that was not clear or maybe confusing. I will take this new information that you supply by replying to the email. I will combine it with your original grant, and the committee is willing to relook at it. So you have an opportunity to have another look without doing the application over. There's no need to do a new application or start over from scratch. The exciting news is that we may just need some clarity on a few pieces of the grant. And so when you apply, and I will respond to you over email what we're needing, when you give me that information in the next quarterly review, you will be reevaluated. And I want to be honest with you all, I'm doing my best on keeping up with all these projects and emails. So if I have missed an email from you or maybe a phone call, please just keep reaching out to me, resend, because I see it and you're on my radar. I have a whole list of all the applicants and churches. And that brings me to another point, which I was going to make later, but I want to emphasize email is best because I need a paper trail. Again, I'm just being very transparent with you all. I talk to many of you on the phone. We text, we talk to each other. We have Zoom meetings. But when it comes to those pieces of your application, email is the best route for me to keep it organized. That way, when I'm getting that information to my review committee, I have it all good to go. And so please consider that when you're thinking, oh, I'll just call Jessica or I'll just text Jessica. You're welcome to do that. But as far as this, with your application and that information, email is best. And so we already went over that last piece, but go ahead to the next slide, Elizabeth. I appreciate you. Okay, so again, how to apply? We need to make sure we have an updated collaborative pledge and clergy commitment, which is on the PHW website. The application itself is for the $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity is live right now on the PHW website. And this is rolling until May 2023. And the Community Mental Health Hub application will be open on the website February 15th, which that date will be on a slide later. I'm just going ahead and telling you that. And again, you'll get these slides. We'll go to the next one, Elizabeth. So this is for the $5,000 to $10,000 opportunity and the big mental health hub. I have more information about what we're looking for with the mental health hubs, but here are some project ideas, things to just think about with the $5,000 to $10,000 application. These are just launching points here, folks. We love seeing creative ideas that fit your context, that fit your town, your county. North Carolina has so many diverse areas, and we've got the eastern North Carolina, rural areas in the east. We've got rural areas in western North Carolina. We've got areas with lots of military presence, veteran presence. We've got all types of just programming and lack of programming in our state in different areas. And so, you know, your street that your faith community is on, your neighborhood, you know, your town, you know, your county. We know that you are on the ground, so to speak. And so when you're thinking about this $5,000 to $10,000 mental health opportunity, what we pray is that you think about holistically what is going on around you. What are you hearing and seeing in your faith community? What are things that it seems that your pastoral staff is addressing in their own pastoral care offerings? So what are folks who come into the church office needing support on? Or what are families needing support on? Or what are you seeing in big events in the unfortunate circumstance of hurricanes and those type of mental health events, right? So we've got all types of things going on in our state. And then, of course, the general ongoing hard things about the world today, right? And so these are project ideas to think about with who can you connect with? Who do you know? Who can you get to know? Who can offer programming or support that is from a licensed mental health professional, someone who does this, who's trained to do this, and offer workshops, offer help do on-site therapy sessions. You can offer a voucher program to connect people to a paid professional. Thinking outside the box about mental health geared towards particular ages. And so we talk sometimes about the things that impact wide-ranging ages in the church. And the church is beautiful. The local faith community is a beautiful sample of the larger society with as many ages and different roles we have, right? And so there's so many things that a faith community is naturally situated to address. And with this grant, we hope that it will help stabilize some of that support that you are probably already providing. That's the other thing I tell our health leads and pastors. You're already working on mental health simply by being a faith community. Is it maybe the healthiest approach or maybe the most efficient or resourceful approach? I don't know. However, you do talk about grief, you do talk about loneliness and loss. You do talk about issues that happen throughout life, big life events. Your faith community is typically right there. And yeah, I see a quick chat. Substance use, yes, you can. That's a great point. Harm reduction, substance use, Partners in Health and Wholeness, we actually have a full-time staff person who will do our sending later, Elizabeth Brewington. And substance use and that type of support, it goes hand in hand with mental health. That is a wonderful point. So these are just ideas. And again, you're going to get these slides. Elizabeth, do you mind going to the next slide? I have 3 slides of ideas. Substance use, of course, I think is on here, one of them. But we have at PHW a mental health and substance use, a joint presentation that we offer. I just want to go ahead and give a shout out on that. If your faith community is working on, want to work on what we call harm reduction, so that's essentially eliminating stigma around drug use so that we can better love and support our neighbors. If you are interested in that kind of thing, please reach out to us. We would love to talk with your faith community and offer that presentation. But just different ideas. Again, something with a robust referral system, that's another tool that we offer. Many of you have heard us talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. There are so many licensed professional therapists who would love to talk with you all and offer workshops and speaking engagements on this. We work with, in particular, Sanctuary Counseling Group, which they will work with anybody throughout North Carolina. So any part of North Carolina, I should say. And also we work with CareNet Counseling, which is another wonderful group. So we have these people, we can connect you, we can see we can help assess resources. Elizabeth, do you mind going to one more slide for me? And again, a few more project ideas. We have a trauma-informed toolkit that Partners in Health and Wholeness established. So we have so many ideas, but what we want you to do is to think outside the box about your local context. We want to think about how the wide impact of not only your pastoral staff and your deacons and your Stephen ministers and those people who are providing care. We certainly are concerned for and about clergy and pastoral staff. But we want to think also about your congregants and people who kind of are in and out of your building, so to speak. Let's go to the next slide, Elizabeth. So things just to remember, we have on our website a big list of things we do not fund. This being a special mental health grant opportunity, we have some flexibility here, but there are things that we do not fund. And this is important because when you're thinking about a $5,000 to $10,000 grant, that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money that will launch a program, launch a ministry, will sustain a ministry in the sense of getting things going so that you can think about fundraising or positioning yourself to get more funding. But we do not fund rent or utilities or salary. So this is a careful wordage here because we know that space is important. If you're going to have space to do things, that has those utilitarian costs. We understand that. We know that. However, $5,000 to $10,000, as much money as it is, the grand scheme of those big ongoing costs, that unfortunately is not that much money. And so with your project and as you discern how you want to apply, what you want to apply for, we ask that you discern how sustainable this project is, because that $5,000 to $10,000, once that money is gone, unfortunately, we don't have this on a renewal process. So you have to think, okay, I'll have potentially this grant, but what am I going to do when that $5,000 to $10,000 is gone? So salary, we do not fund. So this money cannot go towards salary. We know that you have potentially stipends that you want to offer. Stipends are different because that's a one-time payment, a payment that is maybe a brief period that you have set up potentially with a mental health therapist or a speaker who's going to come lead a workshop, or somebody you want to have mental health first aid training. So you're paying for, the books and the curriculum. But when we're talking about salary, utilities, rent, we're talking about ongoing costs. So that is not funded by this grant. So please consider that as you're discerning. And I'm happy to talk or answer questions on a one-on-one basis. So if you don't know, or you're wondering, wow, is this going to be approved? Instead of throwing it in an application, hoping we don't catch it, or maybe we won't get it, please just ask, because I would rather say, no, that's not what we fund, but have you considered using the money this way? So there's ways that we can get creative so that the ministry is not impacted. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm checking my time here. So this is a big, awesome piece of the grant. We've got the $5,000 to $10,000 grant opportunity, which is wonderful. I mean, please know that that is a huge accomplishment. If you receive one of the $5,000 to $10,000 grants, that is a big deal. So I say that because I don't want you all to feel pressured to apply for the Mental Health Community Hub because you feel like you need to, in the sense of, the $5,000 to $10,000 is a stepping stone, or you feel pressured to. I want to be clear here. The $5,000 to $10,000 grant is the main grant opportunity. This mental health community grant is a very, very small piece of this grant. In fact, only 2 grants will receive this up to $50,000 award. The Mental Health Community Hub is not for, and we'll get into this in the next slide in a moment. This is a big deal because one, PHW, Partners in Health and Wholeness, we have never offered a grant opportunity of this size as far as money. And with that, it requires a lot of planning, a lot of ongoing communication with our team, as well as a lot of agreement. But let's go over the basics here. What is it and what will it look like? The PHW Mental Health Community Hubs are regional resource hubs. So what we're thinking about is a faith community acting as a hub for regional, local resources. So what we're envisioning here is a faith community acting as a physical space, right? But also a virtual space and a place of gathering resources, being able to help acute needs as well as referrals and long-standing needs, so that we know that folks can get help, mental health support, whether short-term or long-term, through a local faith community. What does that look like? What that looks like is a network of resources that is licensed and professionally trained to help people in need. So for instance, that may look like a church being able to refer somebody who needs mental health support in the sense that they come into a church office, they need a bus voucher perhaps, maybe they need food, the food pantry, but you can sense that they need help in the sense of long-term help, or something is going on with that person that they are maybe going through a crisis. And so this mental health hub within the church would be able to get that person to the appropriate care that is helpful to that individual, that is dignity driven and a practical help. We also want to be clear that this is not a lift on the pastoral staff or the deacons or an extra lift on the staff in the sense of this ongoing care. What we're hoping for is that this will be a network of resources. So people will be invited to utilize church space for therapy sessions. Maybe you'll allow a therapist that you have developed a relationship with to utilize an office in the church. You can meet people on site, or you will offer trainings on site for mental health first aid or suicide prevention. So the reason that we see this as a resource hub is that this is not for faith communities who are just beginning this work. This is for faith communities that have a long established effort around mental health. We say this because these relationships do not happen between now and May, and they won't happen. This is long established rapport and trust with local mental health agencies, whoever that may be in your area, so that you already have this network of resources, and you know who to call for a referral. So what we're looking for here is faith communities who have already been doing this work for a while, who can take this $50,000 and this award, and they will be able to run with it, essentially, because they already have that foundation. They already have that system set up. They already have a way of being in the community. People in the community know, okay, if I go to this faith community, I know I can get that help I need. Stigma has already been eliminated, or your church is currently eliminating stigma as much as possible around mental health. You are talking about suicide prevention. You're talking about trauma-informed practices. You are being a place in the world already naturally where this work is happening in a sustainable way, and this grant opportunity will deepen and strengthen those efforts because they already exist. And so with the $5,000 to $10,000 piece, we invite you as well to think big on this. There's probably so many things that if a faith community is already doing this work, you think about $50,000, wow, we could use it for this, this, and this, and this. So again, this is not for salaries, this is not for rent or utilities or these ongoing things that once the money is gone, the project falls apart. These community hubs are for thinking about, who do we know, CareNet Counseling or Sanctuary Counseling Group, who do we know in our backyards, so to speak, that we can develop and sustain a presence in our community and help people utilizing professionally trained resources. And so this application will open February 15th and it will close May 5th. And it has a separate application. So I want to be clear here. The $5,000 to $10,000 application is different than the mental health community hub application. So this is going to open February 15th and will be a separate application on our website. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Elizabeth. Thank you. And as you can imagine, I don't even feel like I need to say this. This 2 grants here, folks. I hate that we don't have more money, but this is 2 grants. And so there's so many wonderful faith communities doing this work. And I know you talk with me and I hear you and I see you. I wish that I wish that this wasn't as competitive as it will be, but this is extremely competitive. So therefore, if you do not get this grant opportunity approved or awarded, please know that has no bearing on the sacred work that you are doing. It is essentially just a competitive grant. And what is the committee looking for? That'll be in just a moment. I have a whole separate slide. But one thing about the mental health community hubs that I want to make sure I say now is that if approved, you will sign an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. And we actually have an agreement for all of our grants that we're rolling out that essentially says, if approved, you will use this grant money in the approved and designed way that it was approved by the committee for. And so that is just, that'll come up later on if your grant is approved. But I just wanted that on everybody's radar, that for this big grant and for all of our grants with PHW, we want to know that we're all on the same page. It's just about being on the same page with communication, because we know things change in a faith community. Health leads leave and move, and there's changes in the world. We are in a pandemic. We've had a pandemic. And so we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with changes, that we will update each other, keep each other on the same page, and agree to use the money as intended purpose. So that will happen, but that's not until later on with the approvals. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Elizabeth. So what is a review committee looking for? This slide is for both the 5,000 to 10,000 piece and the mental health hub piece. Sustainability, wide impact, community focus, accessibility, detail, the utilization of licensed mental health professionals, transparency. The committee is concerned about all these pieces, and by sustainability, we want to make sure the project can keep going even after the grant award is utilized. Wide impact means that we want to make sure folks in the wide community can benefit from this. So for instance, if your faith community hosts support groups or different groups throughout the week, we want to make sure that folks know about it, not just congregants or members of your church. We want to make sure folks that it has a wide impact. We also, by wide impact, we're concerned about all ages. We're concerned about all ages and walks of life. We want folks to know that I can come get support here with all the parts that make up my emotional well-being and mental health. And if it's not offered at this faith community, they will help me get referred, have a referral to where I can potentially find it. That also includes community focus. Again, we just want to make sure that the review community is looking for, what is the community dealing with? What are they seeing? Are children having a hard time in school? Are hurricanes and storms being the wide impact of those? So how it impacts the community impacts the individuals, and that is the review committee wants to make sure that is addressed. Accessibility, are these mental health offerings, are they easy to sign up for, or is word getting out, marketing? Are people knowing what's going on? Is it hidden or widely accessible? So is it also accessible through Zoom or in person? Or folks, is it COVID safe? Meaning, are you thinking about if there's an uptick in numbers of people who are getting sick from anything related to COVID? Are you being mindful of that folks who are immunocompromised, do they feel comfortable attending or coming? Or are you making a way to join that feels safe to all people? Thinking about that. And I already went over this, but we just need as much detail as possible. Seriously, please leave no stone unturned in your application. We also, this is a very, very important point. The committee is looking for the utilization of licensed mental health professionals. This is important because I want you to think long range here. If you are thinking about the mental health hub grant, you have to think about property insurance, malpractice insurance. Licensed mental health professionals have malpractice insurance. You need to think about those long range things, because unfortunately, even with the best intentions, things can happen. So the utilization of licensed mental health professionals is important from a logistical standpoint, but also in a support standpoint. We want to make sure that the folks who are helping our people are clinically minded and trained. Mental health, there's a lot of folks who are coaches and biblical counselors and people who are doing wonderful work in the world. but a licensed mental health professional, such as a social worker or a therapist or a mental health counselor, has thousands of hours of training and also supervision, not to mention their educational requirements to become licensed in the state of North Carolina. So for many reasons, there's countless reasons, this is out of protection for you and your people, and liability purposes. But please know that that is what they are looking for. And if you have names ready to go, please put those names in your application, because we need to know who's working with your folks with the grant money. And that brings us to the last point that they're looking for: transparency. Again, these mental health grants are for your faith community, and they're not just for pastoral staff or deacons or a group within the church. They're for everybody. And so transparency is huge. Let's go to the next slide. So again, I think I said this already, but email is the best way to get a hold of me. Phone, texting, voicemails, I will get back to you as soon as I can. And even email, I promise you I'm doing my best. And you won't hurt my feelings to circle back. I get back with most of you. This is a big project, and I just don't want things to get lost in the cracks. So please email me. That way I can keep it all organized and keep it together, so that when the committee has a question or I need to follow up with you, I have everything together. And this is the website for our BIPOC mental health grant and landing page. But if you Google Partners in Health and Wholeness, you will arrive there. Let's I just want to put that there. I still have a few more points. I'm watching the time. I'm not going to keep you all, but a required part two of this project, and if you have already received a mental health grant from us, please know you haven't missed anything. We have been developing this over the winter, but we have two exciting offerings from PHW that just rolled out this January. Is a mental health inclusion plan and a healthy aging inclusion plan. And we're really excited about this. And I just wanted to overview so that you know that if you receive a mental health grant from us, we will be asking you to think and plan for an inclusion plan. And so, Elizabeth, do you mind going to the next slide? A mental health inclusion plan is essentially a plan to encourage the health ministry and overall efforts of the faith community to be intentional and hope-filled around mental health and eliminate stigma. So when we say a mental health inclusion plan, we have a Google form that's on our website where you tell us about things that you are going to do within your faith community to make sure that you include all people in your community. That includes eliminating stigma, thinking about folks where it is hard to talk about mental health, or maybe they have trauma or church hurt. Church hurt is another thing that we've been working on with PHW. To think about all the wide backgrounds a person may have in this life, and how can we make our faith community feel more welcoming to all people, including those with mental health concerns. So a mental health inclusion plan is that. It is what it sounds like. It's a plan to help you become more inclusive. And that is something I didn't want to just attach it to the end of this presentation, but we will be wanting that from our folks who receive these grants. And again, you haven't missed anything. This is a new offering. We will circle back with those who have already received a grant. But let's go to the next slide. I think it may be one more. It's a Google form. And what we will need from you if awarded: an agreement to use the grant as outlined for the intended purposes. We ask in the approval email that you keep track of major receipts. We will contact you for updates and surveys about your project. And as just mentioned, the mental health inclusion plan. And so the first point, an agreement to use the grant as outlined for the intended purposes. For the $5,000 to $10,000 grant, we have another agreement form, but for the big community hub mental health grant, we will have an MOU for that, which we already went over, and that'll come up later. Let's see, let's go to the next slide. I think that might be it. Okay, great. I know we've got a lot of questions and answers, and I invite my team to help me out here. And if we don't get to your question, oh, go ahead.
Okay, one of the questions you have is, can you apply for the $5,000 to $10,000 grant in February and again in March for separate consideration?
That's a great question. Thanks, Vicki. So what will happen is, one, you can only receive the grant once for each component. So let me be clear here. You can apply for the $5,000 to $10,000 grant. You will only be approved once, and you can potentially also be awarded the $50,000 grant. But for each grant component, you can only get that once. So for your question, no, unless you're not approved, you cannot reapply. You will only be approved once. I hope that answers that.
The next question, I believe it has more to do with submission. Yes. And it says, can the grant application be downloaded and saved as a file to allow consistent workflow and return to document progress?
That's a great question. So unfortunately, the way that our database works is that you can't save and return. So what we recommend is that you take our application and copy and paste it into a Word document. Copy and paste it into a Word document. Take your time, fill in, do what you're going to write, prepare yourself, and then go later and submit it by moving the pieces over, your paragraphs over. I want to tell you though, once you submit it, I can send you a copy of your application. So if you submit it or you've already have it in the portal and you're like, oh, I wonder what I said, just reach out to me and I will send you a copy of that application. But unfortunately, it is you can't save and return on the application on the website. Great question.
Another question is, someone said they applied for the BIPOC grant in the last cycle ending 11/30. When should they expect to hear something?
I'm glad that you reached out. So I have reached out to those churches. So I'm sorry to see that, Dr. Knox. I'm writing down your church, Bethel AME, and I'm going to see how that got missed. There might have been a hang up with it wasn't in the cycle for some reason. So I'm really glad you asked this question. And for anybody else who's in this gray area that you applied, that you haven't heard anything, I'm sorry about that. I have been doing my best to reach out to all the applicants. Email me today and I will get back to you to see what the hang up was, why it was not sent to the evaluation committee. There might have been something we needed. It might have been something as simple as I called you to tell you to send me an email. We missed each other. So I'm sorry about
that. There's a follow-up question that was previously answered. So someone wanted to know, can you receive the $10,000 grant and can you apply for the $50,000 grant?
Yes, no, it's a good question because it's really hard to understand if you're not on the team, but yes. If you receive the $10,000, you can still apply for the $50,000 grant. And again, if you are even remotely thinking about the $50,000 grant, please first apply for the $5,000 to $10,000 because that is we're really wanting to get to know you and understand what your church is doing. And I cannot emphasize enough that the $50,000 grant is not for faith communities who are just beginning this work. This is for faith communities who have an established mental health ministry and network and foundation. So please consider that in your own discernment. Any other questions? And if you have a question and you don't want to ask it over chat or whatever it may be, please email me. Happy to answer questions. And I know How do you define regional? Thank you. Hey, Pastor Gibson, I'm grateful you're here. So by regional, what we're looking for is that really your local context. Regional is a big word, but what we mean by regional in the sense that we do not plan to offer two faith communities in the same region. So for instance, we hope to give a mental health hub in the western part of the state, or the central part of the state, or the eastern part of the state. But we don't want to award two $50,000 grants within a couple of hours of each other. That's not our intent at all. So regional meaning you are operating in your local town, your context, but you will be the mental health hub for your area in that way. We don't expect you to cover the whole East or have a bandwidth or a spread of resources throughout the whole eastern part of the state, Pastor. But we wouldn't. What we mean by regional is that we won't be awarding two grants within the same region. I hope that's a great question. Yeah, appreciate everybody being here. And I just want to, I know we're coming up on the 12 o'clock hour, but again, I just want to say that you'll get these slides, you'll get these links, you'll get all the follow-up information, and you're more than welcome to email me. There is no dumb question. There's no off-the-wall question. Our prayer for this grant is that you think big. Think about what you would do if the wind was at your back, so to speak. This is sacred work. This is holy work, and there's no ceiling on it in the sense of what the ways that we can help our communities and help ourselves ultimately too, by being closer to one another and thinking with dignity and trauma informed with outlook. Thank you, Arlisha. I appreciate you. So with that said, with 2 minutes left, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth. I appreciate you all listening to me. Gosh, that was a lot of information. I'm grateful for each of you. And thank you for working on mental health. In closing, we're so grateful that you are working on mental health, because mental health work saves lives. And we're grateful for each of you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Arlisha.
Thank y'all. And I'm going to close us in a PHW tradition of 3 deep breaths. So make yourself comfortable in wherever you're sitting or if you're standing. If you are able to or feel comfortable, feel free to close your eyes or rest your gaze down lower. And then I'm going to count us off for the first deep breath and do the other 2 at your own pace. 1. Thank you all for being with us today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Goodbye.